Engage your brain and enter the mind's eye, your one-stop shop for politics to paranormal and everything in between. I'm your humble host, BJ Turnov. Wait, what? Yeah, I know you can hear the record skip on that one. And I know I've never said that name before. But for the full sake of disclosure to you, the listener, because you deserve it, my full name is Brian Joseph Turnoff, or BJ Turnov. Obviously, you have to be born with a pretty good sense of humor with that type of name. But it's really that type of night, hearing things that you've never heard before. And since you are hearing my voice, you know that we popped up a little bit sooner than later from our summer break. How terrible, we know. But we had a chance to speak with two exceptional individuals who are holding on to suppressed information right now that you need to hear about. Why? Well, because it can change everything that we know and save so many lives. So we decided to take a brief break from our break to tell you all about it. And even for a chance to see some of the things that we're talking about live in person for yourself, we'll tell you where to get that. You know by now that the Mind's Eye doesn't shy away from controversy and with provocative figures. Our appetizer for tonight is Steve Ellswick of Tesla Tech. He's going to give us a quick preview of the Extraordinary Technology Conference. In our opinion, one of the best kept secrets in science. Attendees who go there actually get to see and touch real working devices on advanced energy concepts, devices, magnetic motors, alternative medicine, and so much more, many of which are based on genius inventor Nikola Tesla's ideas. And even better, me, your host, Brian Turnoff, will be experiencing everything with you and validating everything that he's going to say tonight. So we will let you know after the conference that this stuff is legit. We'll be doing a live broadcast from there. We'll tell you all about the information in a few moments. And for the main course, the main entree tonight, the controversial William Rader of Stem Cell of America steps in. He is the founder of several offshore clinics administering injections of human fetal stem cells, claiming therapeutic benefits for a variety of illnesses. William's going to come on by and discuss this hot topic and the new documentary, The God Cells. No more delay. It's time for this information to get out right after a word from our sponsors. If you live or happen to be visiting the West Coast today, you might have noticed that your GPS was kind of acting a little funny or not even really working at all. And that's due to the mysterious military test of a new top secret device in the Mojave Desert. It's also happening on June 28th and June 30th. Just wanted you to be aware, and I'm not even going to touch that one. But how about some good news? Well, a craft beer maker in Florida has created a 6-pack ring that is both biodegradable and even safe for animals to eat. As you can see, we really do have the best daily news updates. You can check it out on our social media pages. Follow us on Twitter at Mind's Eye Show, and the same for Facebook /Mind's Eye Show. The controversy begins when we come back. Steve Ellswick of Tesla Tech's Extraordinary Technology Conference in a matter of moments. With me now is Steve Ellswick of Tesla Tech. Much obliged for joining me right now, Steve.
Thank you for having me, Brian.
You have a fantastic annual conference coming up at the end of July, and we here at the Mind's Eye think it's one of the best kept secrets in science, and that is, of course, the Extraordinary Technology Conference, and we feel that the greater public really needs to know about it because it could change a lot of how we live right now, and our listeners know when we say such a thing, we truly mean it, and we're not just going to blow steam up your ass, pretty much. So tell us a little bit about the Extraordinary Technology Conference. What can attendees expect?
Well, the attendees can expect to find a lot of information on just about anything. Like we're really into things like anti-gravity, and we're going to have some people who claim that they have actual working anti-gravity devices there. Basically based on, I don't know if John Searle, he's a classic or a legend. His technology will be there. We have David Pukta. He actually can teach you how to actually produce gold using this method that he has. They demonstrated at the conference last year using cold fusion. And then this year he's going to show us how to defeat gravity, and he can actually lift things up with electricity. And I think it's above and beyond the typical electrical video stuff you see. And then we also have Linda Moulton Howe. She's world famous. She got her start back in Colorado Springs back in the 80s.
Oh yeah, she's a prolific researcher, and for those who aren't familiar with her, definitely look her up. I actually had a chance to see her, Steve, at a recent conference that I was attending under press, Contact in the Desert, and she talked about some really interesting stuff. I don't think she'll be talking about the same thing. What is she going to be talking about at Extraordinary Technology Conference?
She'll be talking about the laminated metal specimens, from alien spacecraft that have the potential for electrogravitics.
And when you say alien, what do you mean by alien? Just to clarify, like actual extraterrestrial material, or alien as in not from this country, foreign?
Well, we're talking off this planet type of material, similar to that which comes from like the 1947 Roswell crash. And I don't know where she got her metals from, but they have a lot of unique characteristics to these types of metals, and that don't occur naturally here on this planet. So it's going to be interesting to see what she has to say. We're starting also getting the health in that. We're looking into anti-aging, and I'm really interested in that because I'm over 60 now.
I mean, who doesn't want to delay death and really slow down the anti-aging process? What can people expect from that lecture?
Well, we're going to have there's about 4 or 5 different people doing different aspects of it. We have one using quantum sound therapy. Some are using hydrogen as a therapy to keep your body young. We're also looking at things like infrared healing, which will get rid of a lot of pain. That's my biggest gripe with getting older. You're in pain a lot. And then you have Norm Shirley, an MD, PhD. He's going to wrap everything up on Saturday night with this biochemistry and the physics of longevity. And hopefully from that, we'll learn how to live longer, but more fruitful lives, so you're not just deteriorating all the time.
And this really isn't fringe science anymore. I mean, there are a ton of serious researchers going on right now looking into anti-aging and obviously slowing down the death process. I mean, for me, it sounds like there's something tangible right now that people are going to actually see at the lecture and at the conference. They actually have these tools and equipment to do that right now.
Yeah, and then what's happening here is not only what we're going to have at the conference, but if you look at what they're doing with 3D printers now, it's super incredible. They can actually go out and produce hearts, body parts, from your own cells. They can produce another part for you and replace it. It's just a matter of time, when you can just about get your whole body replaced, and who knows what our lifespan will be then. Biblically speaking, you had the longest man in the Bible lived like 900 years old there.
Was that Enoch, I believe? Noah's grandfather, who was somewhere?
Actually, it was Methuselah.
Oh, Methuselah, yes, that's right.
And there's a Jewish riddle that goes, how does the father of the oldest man in the Bible outlive his son? And, Methuselah's father was Enoch, and Enoch never died. He was translated into heaven. He didn't die.
From looking at the schedule, as I know we're digressing a little bit, I don't think there's anything dealing with biblical science at the actual lecture itself, though, just so we can clarify for the listener.
Everything's biblical when you get down to it.
I like the way you think, Steve.
you have a merging right now of hard physics and science with a lot of spirituality, and you're seeing things, like what I would have referred to at one time as woo-woo science. Is actually they're making some headway with that, and they kind of rename it like in the quantum physics and that, and you start getting into like action at a distance, actually almost instantaneously, and so you're starting to see this blending of science and technology. So don't be surprised if you do indeed run into a little bit of it now and then. But my focus is primarily on hard physical science for the most part.
The best part is the fact that people who are going to be there are actually going to get to see these working devices that we're talking about. I mean, this isn't really just a bunch of talk. The conference is really walking the walk.
Bringing in hardware, not hot air.
I like that.
and it's really it's pretty exciting. I mean, we got this thing called the Roner effect, where I don't know if you ever heard of the PAP engine, which runs on a noble gas. These people think they now have it down now, and they can actually physically, using high-speed photography, show the gas expanding and contracting pretty close to instantaneous, and they're getting these tremendous results, from that reaction. If you ever notice that Tesla's work, he always works with change. The faster things change, the more power you get out of it, the more energy you derive from it. So when they can come in here with this noble gas thing, with one charge of helium, they can have these engines running for like 6 months. It's pretty incredible stuff. We're even delving into artificial intelligence. We're working on the next generation of artificial intelligence, where you'll be like Mr. Spock there.
And at the conference, what is the speaker going to focus specifically on in regard to artificial intelligence?
I think she's working on the database use in that, and how to do better searches in that, is what I presume. But don't hold me to that.
We won't. And to scale it back a little bit, you touched on Tesla before, and of course Nikola Tesla, the inventor and genius. And we would do a disservice if we didn't at least talk a little bit about him, or at least some of maybe his unfulfilled dreams. But one of his ultimate dreams was to have electricity, free energy for all. Will attendees at this conference, at Extraordinary Technology Conference, are they going to see free energy? Any demonstration of that?
Well, with Russell Anderson, he's doing the Searle stuff, and with John Searle, an offshoot of that would be energy. Then we have like HHO technology, but these guys have learned things like they have a spark plug coming, which they can ignite water with. And if you ignite water with a spark plug, you can have water running a car. Which Stan Meyer did back in the 90s. And then you have Bob Boyce. His claim to fame is that he had a water car back in the early 1980s. It got the attention of DOD. They come in with the National Security Act, clamp down on him, and to this day they kind of keep a real tight restraint on him. And to come to this conference and to speak, he had to get special permission from the DOD, and he kind of had to tell them what to do, or what he was speaking on before he could speak on it. And a lot of these people, it's not so much what's going to be on stage as getting the opportunity to meet them in person and talk to them. In the evenings, when we have our wine and cheeses and stuff like that, you have a chance to sit down and talk with these people where they're not all uptight and everything, and you learn a lot that you would never ever learn on the internet. This is the kind of stuff that's passed on from word to mouth.
I mean, this is really all the stuff that you listed. It's really hard for my mind to wrap around that this stuff is existing right now, and I can really see it in person. Why don't, you touched on the issue of suppression, and who's really behind it? Who's doing the suppressing?
Well, a lot of suppression is just economic forces in that, Although there have been cases of physical, I myself have been subjected to it way back in the 90s, early 90s, I was attacked, and then I was approached by the men in gray there, and they told me to just keep doing what I'm doing. They like what I'm doing, and they'll watch my back for me and won't make sure that would never happen again.
Tell us a little bit more about that. What do you mean? Fill us on some details.
Well, I was talking about HARP before HARP became HARP.
And of course, that's the for our listeners. I believe that's the weather modification program.
Weather modification. They can do mind control. They can do earthquakes. This is just they can actually see through the earth like a giant X-ray with this kind of stuff. And I had just found out, what HARP was all about. In fact, those people who had approached me earlier in the year, they were supposed to make it snow in Colorado Springs, But the day before it was supposed to snow in Colorado Springs, the day they signed the contract with the government, I just at about that time figured out what it was all about. And I go to a UFO conference. The next thing I'm sick within 48 hours. And as I'm packing up my stuff to leave, we find this electromagnetic field or magnetic field using the Gauss meter at my table only, And so I'm pretty sure I was targeted. And then that's when I started doing my research into mind control and the non-lethal weapons, because I was really sick for almost 6 months. And
wow.
And once I recovered from it, I put together some books on this stuff, But this stuff is very real.
How did you find out about HARP before everyone else? Who was your informant or your research? How did you find out?
One of the inventors, well, not the inventor, but one of the probably a financial group representing the inventor, was trying to get it, maybe I let him speak at one of my conferences, And at that time, by the time he approached me, I already had a full house, and Tesla was really into weather control, so it would have been very appropriate. Bud called me up in the middle of the night because I work a lot of times at night, and so I told him, well, send me some information. So he sent me these patents and that, and then when some of the other materials started coming out about HARP, I saw the same patents there. I knew exactly what it was all about at that point, But for a while there, I was getting phone calls from all the government agencies in Colorado Springs because he had called them and told them that they were going to be blacked out for 2 hours during the conference. So I was getting calls from the Deputy Commanding General's office at Fort Carson telling me we cannot black them out for 2 hours. National defense, right? It's like I told them, hey, these people are supposed to be doing this from California there. They're not going to be on site, and so I have no control over these people, And I think, that's the same year, the guy who wrote me was Anthony English. I heard about, he was telling me about how they could control hurricanes and divert them and everything. That same year, 11 hurricanes formed and marched up along the coast and never made landfall. It put a lot of credibility on what they can do.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that, and for our listeners, we have a lot of people that fall on both sides. We got a lot of people that are, into the fringe topics, and then we also have a lot of skeptics that listen, and both should really know that this isn't something that that isn't fake. This is a program that government has been planning in regard to weather modification since the 40s and the 50s, and in regard to brainwashing, Project MK Ultra. I mean, this is a fact. I mean, you go look it up at the Library of Congress, the CIA archives, and you'll talk about the brainwashing program and how that was used. I mean, these are proven facts that the government has been trying to do and has done.
And there's also a book out called Journey into Darkness. It's out of print, but it covers the whole mind control lawsuit that the Canadians brought against the American government, and they won. It's a very real thing, they're trying to do.
Yeah, this is a fact. Weren't you scared? Because I mean, it sounds like they were trying to intimidate you. I mean, here you are putting out this conference now. So, I mean, at the time, what were you thinking, and how has that changed, or if at all?
I'm put on this planet to do this. This is a calling. We charge what we charge because we have expenses to cover, but I'm not making $1 million off this stuff. In fact, if I wanted to make money, I would have stayed an engineer. As it is, I live a very frugal life. The important thing is that one time I believe I had a heart attack, and I was by myself, and I was ready to leave, and it felt like I was leaving my body. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this big hand come and pushed me back into my body and told me, no, it's not your time to go. So ever since that happened to me, I know that I will never die before my time. And I'm here for a reason. This has got to be my reason. This is my calling. I've been doing this for over 30 years. My conferences, when people come to my conferences, it's almost like a family reunion. I hope that a lot of your listeners might decide to pick up the phone and come to the conference. And if nothing else, maybe become a member of Tesla Tech and get our magazine, because a lot of stuff we put in the magazine and we can explain it better.
Why don't you share your social media information and the contact information so people can get in touch with you, then they can get the tickets for the conference, the whole 9 yards?
Sure. All they have to do is go to Tesla Tech, TESLATECH.info. And when they go up there, that's our website. They can sign up on there, or they can call me at 520-463-1994. And I'm here. I answer the phone 24/7. We're happy to discuss anything with you and help you out.
I mean, that's how we know you're serious. I mean, you're giving out your number, and he does pick up. Every time I've ever called him, he's always picked up within a few rings. I would imagine sometimes you do have to sleep though, Steve, right?
In fact, I was called at 3:00 in the morning from Greece about a month ago on this new development with this anti-gravity device, which they're powering with liquid nitrogen, and so. With this device, it makes hoverboards possible, yet they have 9 times the thrust of the space shuttle using magnetics and liquid nitrogen. And we have an article coming up in our magazine about it.
With that hoverboard thing, I think it touches on something I was thinking about. And I mean, to have that sounds fantastic. But Lord, I would not want that to be accessible to the public. I mean, it's like anything else. It could be reckless. It could be used poorly. I think that's with a lot of these topics. Maybe you think that's maybe a reason for suppression, is that more they're afraid of the safety purposes as opposed to anything else.
Well, they can say that, but these days it don't matter because you got the internet, and with the internet there are no secrets, and everybody can find out about anything at any time. We're in a brave new world. The best thing a person can do is learn as much about it as you can. We're different in that we don't have a singular focus. We use a multifaceted approach, and we use a lot of hands-on, get in there down and dirty, and actually do the stuff. You come to the conference, you're going to be playing with hardware, you're going to be trying stuff out, if you want to. And if you don't want to, you don't have to. But you're guaranteed to have a great time, get to meet a lot of the people, and I hope you come, Brian, and I think you'll all have a great time.
I was going to tell you give one last sales pitch, but you did it for me, and just again go over the details. It's was it July 27th?
July 27th, July 31st. We're in the Embassy Suites in Albuquerque. If you're going to stay at the hotel, you need to contact them immediately and get yourself a room. The rooms are like $94 a night for a 2-room suite, free breakfast, free happy hour, and free wireless. It's a great deal. Normally the rooms are like $190. And the conference, right now we're running a 25% discount if you get signed up by the end of the month. Just give me a call, and I'll get you taken care of. I'm
really excited to really see this, the real stuff, all the stuff that supposedly isn't real. It really is, and I can't wait to see you and see it live in person. And across the hallway, we have the Conference of Future Energy. If you come to my conference, you get to go that one free too. Well, you know how to sell them, sir, and I'll see you in a few weeks. Have a great day. More info now at teslatech.info. Stem cell controversy with Dr. William Rader after the break. Dr. William Rader of Stem Cell of America joins me now. Thank you so much, Doctor, for discussing this very important topic with the mind's eye.
I appreciate you willing to talk about it. There aren't a lot of people who are willing to talk about it.
Well, that's pretty much what the show is all about, is highlighting and putting a light on certain topics that really need to be told to the public. And you were recently featured in the recently released documentary, The God Cells, Fetal Stem Cell Controversy. And to tell you the truth, Doctor, before I watched it, I wasn't really on either side of the fence, just really due to lack of education. But afterwards, I can say I'm firmly planted. Before we get into like the ethical and the legality parts of it, let's cover our scientific basis. Tell me exactly, what is stem cell therapy?
I'll tell you in a second. What I'd be interested in is what changed your mind. What did you see? What did you hear that changed your mind?
Really, it was. I guess it was more the tangible, is seeing the people who were really suffering. I mean, really gave a human quality to it, something that I really just wasn't aware of before. And really, when you really see the people, you see them in the faces, and you see those dramatic differences from start to finish, it's almost undeniable what stem cell therapy is going to bring and how it could help countless amount of people, really.
Oh, great. Now, the bottom line is, a fetal stem cell is the size of your pinky fingernail, and it gets to be you and I. And no one stops and thinks, wait a second, that must be a very powerful thing that can turn into you and your nose, your fingernail, your whatever, and yet they walk by and don't pay attention to it. And, of course, it's illegal in the United States. I am one of the few doctors who are using fetal stem cells, but I do it in Mexico, in Tijuana, because you can't do it here. But even all over the world, there are only a few doctors involved in this. And to me, it's so obvious that this is a source of powerful energy for good, for health. And what we've learned, or what I've learned, is it has special qualities. One of them is that it is the only stem cell that you can get pure neuronal, nerve, or brain cells from the brain of the fetus. No other stem cell can you do that. You're not going to be able to get those neuronal cells, which are critical for diseases such as Parkinson's and things like that. You saw those Parkinson's patients. You just never see anything like that. But these cells know where to go and what to do, and they're unique in that way. They also have the ability of having immunopreference. Now, what that means simply is that you can give any fetal cell to any patient, and there won't be any rejection. That's phenomenal. That you can give any fetal cell to any patient, and there won't be a rejection. We also have developed a way of expanding the cells so the material from one fetus can treat thousands of patients, thousands from one fetus. Hopefully that information can attenuate or lessen the negativity about abortion. We have nothing to do with the abortion. Where the cells come from, they use abortion as a source of birth control. And therefore there are a lot of fetuses available, and what we do is, at that point, we become involved and ask the mother, is it all right if we use this to help someone, or is it going to be thrown down the drain as routine medical waste? It's going to change the face of medicine, in my opinion. In the 20th century, it was drugs. In the 21st century, it's going to be biology. It's going to be cells. And the number one cell, the best cell, is the fetal cell. We've, in the last 20 years, have treated over 3,000 patients without matching, without giving immunosuppressive drugs. That is something that with every transplant that they do. They give patient drugs to suppress the immune system so it won't destroy the stem cell. Well, with a fetal stem cell, you don't have to do that. And those drugs are very, very dangerous because they're protecting the stem cell, the new stem cell, from being destroyed. But in the same way, they're giving the patient a immune system that's much, much weaker than they had before, or a normal person, and therefore they're more susceptible to all kinds of infections, etc., because they don't have that strong immune system.
And many a times it's like...
go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to say that, and something that the documentary brought up is that a lot of times in the current health system in America, a lot of times you're just, when you do get treatment, you're taking these drugs, a lot of times you're going to have side effects, and you're trading from one chronic disease to another.
Absolutely. and the immunosuppressive drug can be worse than whatever the person was suffering from in the first place.
I mean, it really seems, stem cell treatment really seems like a miracle almost, in a sense, in that it's obviously a huge medical advancement. And if I'm doing the math correctly from what you said before, 100 fetuses can help tens of thousands of people struggling with terrible diseases, cystic fibrosis, leukemia, Parkinson's, which you mentioned. How many different diseases can stem cell treatment treat?
I'm not going to put it in numbers, but they have the ability of going around the body, finding out where there is a defect, excuse me, and either supporting those cells that are defective and getting them to work normally, or they can actually turn into that cell that's destroyed or damaged because it has that capacity. It can be any of the 220 cell types of the body. It can be anything. So it's more of a miracle because it can be anything. And it decides where it should go, what it should do. I don't. It's really a process that is a normal process, a life process that happens without us doing anything because it wants to preserve itself. So once again, in the future, you're going to be able to grow organs if you have to. It's just phenomenal. But they're staying away from that. They're staying away especially from fetal stem cells because of the issue of abortion, which we have nothing to do with. And also, the FDA is pushing the envelope of not allowing you to do research with fetal stem cells. They're creating barriers so that you have to spend maybe $1 billion and many, many years before they'll approve anything, and they probably won't approve anything when you do that, which is quite different than just approving a drug. But a drug comes from a drug company, and a drug company is about making money, and you can't make a lot of money with fetal stem cells like you can make a lot of money with chemotherapy and all other kinds of drugs, because there's no reason, if I told you already that and you expanded it, thousands and thousands of patients with maybe 100 abortions, and we have nothing to do with the abortion, and that material would be thrown away. So once that really knowledge gets out, and that's why I'm talking to you, that once the knowledge gets out, once you see these children who have diseases that are untreatable, and they're treatable, and the child gets better, once there's enough of that, or somebody quite famous happens to have a child that has one of these diseases, and they're cured, that once that's out in the public, I think things would start to change. There's going to be a lot of energy to stop it. Jonas Salk got into a big conflict with the polio vaccine before he was finally able to get it out. The first thing that the authorities, so to speak, do is try to stop the new thing. Now, they revoked my license, so I don't have a medical license. I told them that I would turn in my license, and I actually applied to turn in my license because they wanted me to give immunosuppressive drugs to every patient. To some patients, it will be a toxin and a poison. To most patients, it will make them more susceptible, as we were talking about a little while ago, to having infection, to having any kind of stress, causing much, much more of a negative reaction than it normally would, because the immune system protects us from all these things. And I said, no, I'm not going to do it. And I turned in my license. I filled out the form. They sent it back, and they want to revoke it. They want to make an example of me, which is bizarre. Even in the trial, if you look at the transcript, they say, perhaps Dr. Rader is right, and he's years ahead of everybody, but he's not doing the standard of practice. Is that a catch-22? So in other words, anytime you do something new, even if it's successful, you're not doing the standard of practice, what was already done. It's totally bizarre.
I mean, everything about
what?
I was going to say everything about the health industry right now is bizarre and a catch-22. You were saying with the research, it's legal to have the research, but then they put up these unbelievable barriers to make it happen, which then, people try to say, well, why aren't there any scientific research papers? Well, because they're putting up these barriers to make it happen.
The drug companies are tied into the FDA in an incredible, obvious way. There's one drug company that was putting out a new antipsychotic drug and had someone at the FDA assigned to do it. And what they did was they paid him $500,000 to go around and lecture about this while he was investigating it. And then later on, he retired and became a vice president of that pharmaceutical company. I mean, couldn't be more obvious. But yet it's not seen, and if it is, they turn their head the other way. That's the game. That's the system. And they don't want you interfering with the system.
I mean, do you think the fact that, there's one thing for you to be doing it outside of America, knowing that it's illegal and performing these treatments, but then it's another thing when you actually wrote a book, I believe, a few years ago, pretty much saying to everybody, this is what can be done for pretty much the whole world to see. Do you think do you think that made you a marked man of sorts?
Well, it probably did. Like somebody might be listening right now and feeling that. But I cannot, and when I know, let a child die because of the fear of that happening. Because I know too much. I've seen too much. If you look at some of the patients who have been, the brain has been destroyed partially by having the vaccines. It couldn't be more obvious. We had a woman who brought her child for routine vaccine, normal child, everything normal, and he started having seizures, 5 seizures a day. And then when the doctor called her to come in again, because she didn't, for the next round, she refused to do it. He convinced her that it was very dangerous to his child, to her child, and it was against the law of that state. So she went ahead and did the next one, 300 seizures a day with brain damage. And not one suit that has been brought up against the pharmaceutical companies for vaccine damage has ever been won by the parent. They have their own lawyers, they have whatever it is, and they always win the suit. But look what I just told you, that I've seen, just one person has seen so much of this, and the temporal relationship, the relationship between when they get the vaccine and when these things happen is so obvious. Now, on the other hand, vaccines are important, so there should be decisions made based on that. And this was in Texas. She became an advocate of checking vaccines and finding. She found out a lot of stuff. I don't know if you know, but they put thimerosal in there, which is mercury, and all it is a preservative, and it was causing a lot of damage. And also, the governor of the state, it was Texas, would not vaccine his children. It's bizarre.
It really is, and when we have these type of medical advancements, there are always going to be that resistance at first, even like in polio that you mentioned before. And talking about doctors and dealing with stem cell therapy and treatment, it's very complicated because in the movie you show that there were a lot of great doctors who said this should be here right now, but then at the same time there was just as many doctors that have their heads in the sand. Do you think doctors are afraid of the same thing that happened to you might happen to them? I mean, why aren't doctors touting this like the polio vaccination?
It's out of the group's consciousness to do it, and so no one wants to get involved and maybe get in trouble. We had a doctor who had, to make a long story short, because of a mother who was an advocate of stem cells, her child also had seizures, uncontrollable seizures, and brain damage. And after he had the stem cells, the seizures stopped. That doctor refused to talk to the mother or have anything to do with her. And when she finally found out why, he was excited. He thought it was marvelous. And he went to his university, a major university, and they told him, you better cut your ties with Rader. We don't want you in this university to be having any kind of fetal stem cell treatment or any association with someone who's doing fetal stem cells. I mean, again, every avenue that we look at, it's strange. If whoever was saying that, if they had a child, heaven forbid, that had some disease that could be treated, I think they would change their mind. But they have an intellectual concept. They never learned about it because it's not out there, and therefore they're determined to put it down. With over 3,000 patients, we don't have one doctor who's supportive, who the child is in the practice of that doctor. They're not supportive because they're worried about a lot of things, including affecting their practice, because they're unable to, like the child I just described, he's untreatable. They gave him every anti-seizure medication they could, and it didn't change anything. So he's thinking, wait a second, if this thing comes out, then what do I do? That's all I have. I have the right to prescribe, and there are a lot of anti-seizure medications, and if this thing really works, then I'm out of business.
It's sad that so many people can be helped right now, and there seems to be a refusal. Let's talk about the human quality. Let's scale it back a little bit right now, because there are so many people who are going to be listening, and who know someone, or they themselves have been afflicted with this serious disease and could be helped right now. Let's talk about the actual therapy and treatment itself. How expensive is it? What's the process like?
Okay, it's a very benign procedure. It's a simple IV and a simple subcutaneous. It's really not painful. It takes approximately an hour. Afterwards, because there's no negative side effect, you can go back to the U.S. You don't have to wait. You don't have to do anything. The cost is determined by the person who's talking to the patient. We do give a lot of free treatment. They're going to kill me for saying that, because then everyone's going to say, well, why are you charging me something and someone else got it for free? But it's usually someone who can't afford it and a very dangerous situation with the patient.
Now, is each treatment, is it individually based, or is it like kind of like a one size fits all? Everybody gets 3 treatments. How does that work?
All right, it depends on the individual. Usually it's one treatment, but you can come back. Mostly they come back because the patient is doing so much better. They want what they call an insurance policy. So it's up to them, and the price drops dramatically, depending on what they originally paid, drops dramatically. So we do see patients come back, but there's no protocol that says, oh, they have to come back 3 times and da-da-da-da-da. It depends on the individual patient, how they're doing, and what it is they want to do.
And obviously this doesn't work on everybody.
It doesn't work on everybody. No, nothing does. But the percentage of people with all the different kinds of pathology that have improvement, sometimes a cure, that's not the most common thing, is about 90 some odd percent, which in medicine is amazing.
Are there any side effects?
There are no side effects, nothing. Over 3,000 patients, 20 years.
Every single drug, I mean, there always seems to be some type of side effect.
Yes, but this isn't a drug. And you're right. Every drug just about has side effects. Many of them, the side effects worse than the original reason they got the drug. But with a fetal stem cell, that's human material. There isn't any reason one would calculate that there would be a side effect. Only, once again, if you're using a stem cell that you need to do immune suppressant drugs and you have to do matching, that is something that occurs. But that has nothing to do with what we're doing. So we never match and we never do immune suppressive drugs. If you think about it, then why do we need a bone marrow registry? You don't. These cells are better than a twin because there's no necessity for any kind of negative reaction. So we spent like $14 billion on bone marrow registries to register them, to keep them alive, to do this, to do that. None of that is necessary. Yet I met with one of the premier bone marrow registries. I thought they'd greet me with open arms, and they didn't want anything to do with me. And I said, well, look, I'm going to give you some cells. You don't say where they came from. You don't say anything. And give it to 3 children who have some kind of disease that you were trying to find a match, and you couldn't find a match, and you know that child is going to die. And they just absolutely would have nothing to do with me.
It makes me angry and sad, but I want to get back to that part in a little bit. You've helped so many. I mean, you've really helped thousands of people through Stem Cell of America, and there's too many stories to really share. But is there one story or one person that you helped that really that stays with you as you do this, and to remember as you're getting as you meet these complications and these barriers?
Well, what I think of is, the Jerry Lewis telethon.
Mm-hmm.
And the firemen there with their boots and putting all that money in. They raised like how much was it? I don't know, like $1 billion or something like that in all the years. And they've done absolutely nothing. And we have children who are running around playing tag with normal children and able to tag them rather than ending up in a wheelchair to eventually dying. And when you see these children and you see them deteriorating, and the parents just are waiting for them to go through these phases, and the child themselves knows what the future holds, and then you see them turn that around, it's fantastic. At least I consider it fantastic.
And watching the documentary, The God Cells, it really puts everything into perspective. We have a commercial break which we're about to hit, but give out your social media information for Stem Cell of America so people can look at it while we're on the break.
You can go to stemcellofamerica.com, and you can see a lot of what it is that I'm talking about. It also gives you ways of contacting us. The telephone number is 310-455-5300.
Perfect. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. We are back with Dr. William Rader discussing the new documentary, The God Cells, Fetal Stem Cell Controversy. Now, the doc is playing bi-coastal. It's playing in New York and Los Angeles. How long will it be? Can people catch it for?
You have to go to the theater, seeing how many people show up. Right now it's scheduled for 5 showings a day for a week, but if a lot of people show up, what will happen is that it will continue. But Eric Merola, who is in charge, the director, etc., has all kinds of plans for putting it on YouTube for free and all different kinds of places so people can see it.
Great. Is there an expected date of when mass distribution?
It's up to him. I don't know when it is, but he's going to do it. It depends on whatever factors influence him and how he wants to do it, but definitely he's going to do it.
You're the doctor. You don't worry about those things. You just help the people.
No. Right on. No. All I want is that it's out there. And how it gets out there in all those ways that Eric is doing, I have no interest in. What I do have an interest in is I've been trying for 20 years to get this out there, and finally it is out there. So I give Eric a lot of credit.
And I think, for me, in my opinion, it's only a matter of time. Have you heard anything legislatively? Is there any recent movement there?
Not yet, but people, patients, friends of patients, people who saw the documentary and got what we were talking about are starting to organize and try to change things. It's like anything else. When it's new and when it interferes with a group who have control and money and power, that it takes a while to turn it around, if you can turn it around.
You mentioned that it's been available for 2 decades now, and the control part of it. And when thinking about it and sitting down after watching the documentary, it really just, honestly, I was just really angry and riled up knowing that people, my close relatives, my friends of close relatives, they have died in the last few decades unnecessarily, and people are suffering right now that don't need to suffer. For me, in my opinion, I think it's time for people to get angry. It's time to stop people being complacent. Obviously, do it in a non-violent manner, like Martin Luther King Jr., of course, but angry nonetheless. I mean, how can people change this in America right now?
Well, it's what we're saying, and through programs such as yours, get the information. Then you have a choice. Right now, you don't have a choice because the doctor will not tell you about this. And if you bring it up to the doctor, traditionally what happens is they say, don't do it. It can hurt you. They're doing research. We'll be here in 15 years, so don't do it. That's about every doctor that we've had a patient when I would ask them, what did your doctor say? And I would tell them, go back to your doctor and ask them where they looked it up, that it was dangerous or it causes this or that. And then the doctor just becomes offended. I'm the doctor. I'm telling you not to do it. What are you asking me to give you information about where I looked it up? They didn't look it up because there's no place to look it up. It's just their opinion.
Now the God Cells documentary featured a few celebs: Gordie Howe, the NHL great, I believe the director of Blue Bloods, a pretty popular TV show right now, a few others. And you mentioned obviously that there's no movement legislatively. So I'm thinking, who can help this? Who needs help from stem cell therapy? But someone who can move the dial and move the people to do something. And the first person that popped in my head, of course, is Michael J. Fox with Parkinson's disease. I mean, what has he ever expressed any comments on stem cell therapy at all?
Well, I've been told that his doctors have been told about what I'm doing, and again, the same kind of thing. Remember, they're getting a lot of money, millions of dollars, research centers, a lot of power, and that's just a guess because it doesn't make sense. And I don't think Michael J. Fox ever sat down and really understood what it is that we're doing, because there's no downside to it. And I've been trying to get, once again, someone to get his attention, like, for example, now with this documentary, and then maybe he'll get involved. I don't know. But certainly with his support, things can change dramatically. He's very popular. People really love him, and they believe him.
Now, obviously, the big part of the controversial aspect to stem cell therapy and treatment is the religious part of it. I want to get just your personal side of it. Are you a religious man? What are your thoughts on that argument?
My thoughts are that, and you heard that in the documentary, that it's the abortion's going to happen. We have nothing to do with the abortion. It's going to happen. I mean, the statistics are phenomenal about how many abortions there are, let's say just in the United States alone. And then the material is thrown away. Somebody said to me, actually, if it's thrown away, it dies. If it's given to somebody else, it stays, some portion of it, whatever, stays alive. But the bottom line is that it's going to happen. Why not have some good from it? And if you're a religious person, then why would God allow this procedure? Why would God allow you to use this to save somebody's life?
One of the patients, I believe it was the Blue Bloods director, he noted and compared it to he said taking stem cell therapy was like cheating. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, I thought that was just an interesting way of
actually, I've been asked to treat a major athlete who didn't have a major problem but had a problem, and I said no, because it is cheating. He was saying it in a philosophical way, but it is cheating because the athlete, like if you talk about an Olympic athlete, what's the time to go from first to last, or last to first? It's parts of seconds, and everybody who gets the cells, no matter why they're getting it, it's the closest thing to the fountain of youth because their reflexes are better. Even he said something about that. That it turns back the clock in a lot of ways. Your reflexes were better when you were 18, 19, 20 years old than they are now that you're 50, 60 years old. But the cells are able to do that. And therefore, I would not give it to a professional athlete. I haven't had a professional athlete that was suffering from something that this would really help them with. The one that I just told you was just a professional athlete who wanted to, win, so to speak.
Once we get down that road, we'll talk about it then. Let's just get it legalized first. Obviously, as we said, in America, it is illegal. Is this a worldwide phenomenon? Because Big Pharma is pretty much everywhere, and they're pretty pervasive.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
What countries is it legal?
There are some places in Russia, some places in Eastern Europe, Georgia, some places in the Ukraine. It's legal, but it's very limited in what it is the use is. And they still have all those issues about abortion. And they're not doing what I'm doing. They're not taking something that's going to be thrown away and used then to help somebody. Their thought is, well, there's an abortion, and that's it. It doesn't matter what's going to happen after or how it's going to save a life. And that's the usual attitude. But there are a few countries which it's allowed.
The abortions argument in the U.S. really is more of a facade. The Catholic lobbyists, they clearly don't have enough federal power to sway federal law. I mean, Roe v. Wade right off the bat. So in my opinion, there, as you mentioned before and alluded to before and talked about, that there must be something else blocking the legalization, and to me, it mainly falls square on the shoulders of Big Pharma.
Oh, absolutely. And I gave you an example of somebody who supposedly was doing research for Big Pharma and ended up as a vice president of a big pharmaceutical company. All these things are obvious. All these things, if you look in the internet, you can find it. But nobody's interested. No one stops and thinks for a second. Wait a second. What is Big Pharma about? Curing someone? No. As a matter of fact, if one of their researchers is working on, let's say, diabetes, looking for another oral diabetic agent, and sees, oh, I may be coming up with a cure, they stop them. No. What does the stockholder want? Does the stockholder want a cure and the end of that drug? Or does the stockholder want the drug to be used forever in that individual's life?
I mean, just like every other question, the answer normally is going to be who's going to profit, or in this case, who's going to lose the money.
Right.
You're a few months away from the 2-month anniversary of your license being revoked. You mentioned it. I know it's obviously a sore subject. Looking back, I mean, you're still helping people. You're still doing your great work that we appreciate here. Have you learned any lessons that you can express? I mean, or is it just keep doing what you're doing, essentially?
Well, the lesson that I learned, because I'm a Pollyanna, I am naive, is that I thought that once, in whatever respect, that this information got out, that it would be accepted, and people, doctors, etc., would start to use fetal stem cells instead of giving drugs. And what I found out is not only is that not happening, but they're very angry with me. They don't like the idea of the new thing. And I told you what happened in the trial to take my license away. I mean, it's unbelievable. Trying to be objective, I didn't think that would happen. The odds are, if you look at it objectively, is for me to receive some kind of positive honor or whatever, as opposed to taking my license away. That's what I learned, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it was, and perhaps that's the way it will always be. But having the knowledge that I have and the experience that I have, I feel an obligation to go forward as much as I can in any way I can to get this out there. And again, I'm not saying do it. I'm saying know about it. Like the parent of a child, know about it. If you have seizures, as I was talking about before, these cells are phenomenal about turning that around. If you have seizures in half the brain, and some type of seizures are in half the brain, the most exciting thing, and it's in the public domain, and these doctors are getting tremendous positive rewards for removing half the brain. They remove half the brain that has the foci where the seizures start. And they say, don't worry, your kid is smart. Da, 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 da. They are actually surgically removing half the brain. It takes many, many hours, a lot of talent with the neurosurgeon. But wait a second. Compare that to an hour and getting an IV and a sub-Q. I mean, it's phenomenal.
No,
but that is what is done to patients, especially children, who have seizures that cannot be treated, cured, whatever, with drug therapy. And they decide, well, let's take out half the brain, and they do it.
It's sickening. I mean, it reminds me of when electroshock therapy and lobotomies were essentially pretty much the standard for treating multiple issues. I mean,
a long time ago, they were convinced when somebody let's say, had a subdural hematoma. That means that there was blood under the lining that covers the brain, either from trauma or whatever. There was blood, accumulated blood, and the patient would be crazy, acting crazy. And they decided that it was some kind of witch or something like that. So what they decided to do was to release the poisonous subject, the witch, or whatever you want to call it. So they did what's called trephining, which is taking a drill, a regular drill, and drilling a hole in the skull. Okay? Now, they were convinced they were right because the patients who had the subdural hematoma, we actually do that today, making flaps, allowing the pressure to come out, the blood to release the pressure, and then they get better. Well, what percentage of these people got better? A very small percentage. But that convinced them that all of them had the devil in them.
And now it just makes me think, what are some of the practices that we're doing right now that are going to be frowned upon for, 40, 30, 20, even 10 years from now with the advancements that we're making medically, especially with this?
Exactly, yeah.
Do you think it's just a matter of time before this happens?
When you're talking about...
when stem cell therapy, fetal stem cell therapy will be approved in America.
I can't say... I'm not wanting to put a curse or whatever on somebody, but if some very famous person had a child that had one of these diseases, which is incurable, who went, like some of our patients do, to every center in the country, every major center, and nothing could be done, and they tell them, okay, that's it. Your child will be dead within a week, a month, or whatever, and they're treated with fetal stem cells, and they become totally normal, that person, if they're powerful enough, and within our society, that person can change things. That's what we were talking about, Michael J. Fox, or some other person at that level.
So in that regard...
So I can't tell you when that's going to happen, but if it does, I do believe it will change things.
Well, sadly, it's just a matter of time, and
I think so.
And I guess
that's what George Schlatter said. You remember? He's the guy who created laughing. He's in the video.
Well, he was dead right, and I'm only hoping it's really a matter of time, and hopefully sooner than later. And taken away from the documentary, depending on whether you're on against or pro stem cell therapy, the one thing that I think either way you can take away is the preciousness and really the amazingness of life and of the human condition and biology of humans.
But when you think about it, I'm going to repeat, the fetus is the size of your pinky fingernail. That was you. Now, how could it be you if it doesn't have all this power for growth, repair, positive, etc.? It's phenomenal. I mean, really phenomenal. When I was in gross anatomy, it blew my mind to see what the human body was. And it comes from just a bunch of cells. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, it really is mind-blowing. And besides word of mouth, is there anything more active people can do to get this out?
Well, there are people, and they're usually patients or parents of patients, who then go to the press and do that. But it's such a small amount of people. Once again, in just a few minutes ago, we were talking about someone who is really powerful, and that makes the difference. Someone who can be out there and people will listen to. A regular person, not a lot of people listen to them, especially when they say what happened, it's impossible. And if you go to your doctor and you ask him, could this be possibly true? You saw that one doctor say, if it was crap, I'd say it. I've seen a lot of crap. That they constantly take the negative. They don't want to look for the positive. They don't want the positive. Any major medical breakthrough, as soon as it was public in any way, was attacked. It's just the way we are.
And I guess that's understandable to meet resistance, but now I think it's time for us to move forward, and hopefully this conversation will help that movement. Before I let you go for the evening, give out your social media information so people who are in desperate need of help can get it right now.
Okay, it's stemcellofamerica.com is the website. Telephone number is 310-455-5300. And I really appreciate your attitude and that you're doing these kind of programs. And I'm sure that you've gotten negative flack with a particular program. That they're not everybody saying, great, you're listening to this one right now. They're not all saying, oh, this is great. You'll get somebody who says, I don't care what it is, it's an abortion involved, we shouldn't be doing it, and you shouldn't be spreading the word about it.
I've learned in this business that if you get half the people yelling at you and half the people praising you, or even worse, 3/4 of the people hating you, you're probably doing something right. So
exactly. I believe that.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Dr. Rader. We'll do our best here to promote fetal stem cell therapy and, of course, the documentary, The God Cells. Much appreciation to you and giving us a mind's eye moment.
Thank you so much.
Final thoughts on the show wrap-up after this quick commercial break. All right, so by now you either believe us or you don't believe us. That's why you can't take our word for it. You really do have to see this stuff for yourself. Let's start with the 2016 Extraordinary Technology Conference. That's Albuquerque, New Mexico, July 27th through July 31st. I really can't wait to broadcast and be there for this one. Please join me then and stop by if you do happen to come by. All this information right now is at our website, themindseyemedia.com. And as you heard from Dr. William Rader of Stem Cell of America, the new documentary, The God Cells, is currently playing on the East and West Coast. If you don't get a chance to check it out, mass distribution should be pretty soon. If not, if you can't do any of that, definitely look into the benefits of stem cells treatment. You might have found a believer in me. All right, and as you know by now, The Mind's Eye has moved to Los Angeles, California. We're having a great time. We're posting a lot on our social media about some of the stuff that we've been doing. Definitely check it out. Again, that's themindseyemedia.com. We're still working on our studio, so hopefully the noise wasn't too much of an issue today. We're going to retract back into our summer shells for a few more weeks. We're definitely going to pop back up for our live broadcast with Tesla. I wouldn't be surprised if we pop up again before then. We're always talking with really interesting people, and we always want to bring it to you. We'll be back sooner than you think. It's time for us to sign off. Big thanks and tip of the hat to you, the listener. This is your humble host, BJ Turnov, signing off for The Mind's Eye.